Chapter 12. Their father did not believe the little boy at first. How could there be 3 paths that led in 3 directions from a tree that was 7 trees in one? He asked. But there is such a 7 tree, the little boy insisted. There are 3 paths that lead from it in different directions to spots where there are 2 trees in one. It's a 2-2-2 plan. And each of these 2 trees at the end of the 3 paths have something special there, his father asked. Yes, there is a place to watch, a place to climb, and a place to run around, the little boy said. Are you sure you're not just hoping that this tree is something important? Their father asked. Perhaps you're just imagining that this is a special tree. But there are platforms at the top of one of the 2 trees at the end of a path, the little boy said. I'm sure it's where someone lives or watches. I can see the ocean from one of them. And if you peer up at the very top of the 7 tree, the little boy continued, you can almost make out some very large platforms. Someone lives up there. How can that be? Their father asked. How can someone build something at the top of a large tree and live there? I don't know, the little boy said, but I am sure it's there. I believe him, the little girl said. If he says there is a 7 tree with 3 paths that lead from it, then it's true. And I've seen new creatures, the little girl said. There are animals with long, floppy ears and bushy tails. There are tiny creatures with wings of many colours that float on the wind. So, we are not alone here in this new land? Their mother asked. No, we are not alone, the little girl said. There are new animals here, unlike anything that lived with us on our island. The little boy pleaded with his mother and father to come with him to the 7 tree to see for themselves. In the end, his father agreed to go with the little boy to see for himself. Their mother and the little girl remained behind in the sandy clearing with the animals to make sure they were safe. As the little boy and their father disappeared into the forest to the east, the little girl asked the 2 great white owls to join them. She looked into their eyes. The 2 owls knew what she wanted. The little girl needed them to keep careful watch in case the dragons, manticores, or griffins might be returning. The 2 owls flew to the top of the tallest tree next to the sandy clearing and settled in to look for enemies. They sat at the very top and preened their heads back and forth to keep watch. The little girl and their mother did their best to keep the animals calm and happy in the sandy clearing. But it was a very small place. There wasn't much room for all of them. The little girl asked the bison to spread out around the small clearing. They were gentle creatures, but they looked fierce. They might scare off the orcs and ogres. Their mother and the little girl then set out to organize their belongings in the middle of the small clearing. They hung their clothes from the tree branches. The little girl was especially good at swinging from one tree branch to the next. She loved to hang things from each of the tree branches. Their mother lit a fire in the small clearing and began to cook lunch for them with the vegetables and fruits and nuts they'd gathered. A thin, white stream of smoke lifted high into the air from the small fire she'd started at the center of the small clearing. Just as their meal was nearly finished, the 2 white owls came hurtling down from the top of the tree. They'd seen something. They landed next to the little girl. They stared into her eyes. She could see the fear in their eyes. She knew what it meant. The dragons were returning for them. They would be on them in moments. They would see the animals gathered in the small sandy clearing. There was nowhere for them to hide. What the little girl did not realize was how the dragons knew where they were. She didn't remember that the white smoke from the fire drifted far above them. The dragons had seen the smoke from their fire. They would be able to find them by following the smoke. The white smoke was leading the dragons right to them. The little girl and their mother did not know what to do. It was too late to hide. It was too late to take the animals onto the path and into the forest. They didn't know what to do. "Help us!" the little girl said loudly. Her voice sounded small in the clearing. The trees on all sides muffled her small voice. "Help us if you are there!" the little girl called out again. "We do not know what to do or where to go. We need to hide from the dragons." The little girl didn't know who might be able to hear them. She did not know who might be nearby, or even what they might be able to do. But she could sense that someone, or something, was nearby. She knew that they had been watching them from the moment they'd arrived in this new land. And at that very moment, they decided to show themselves to the little girl. Small, tiny doors flew open from dozens of trees all around them. Small, tiny people flew out from each of those doors. Many of them surrounded the little girl. Several of these small people with wings fluttering back and forth moved toward the fire. They beat their wings furiously in order to put out the fire. Next, these small winged people flew up and down what remained of the column of white smoke drifting up into the air. Their beating wings quickly made the smoke disappear. The small winged people then lifted as one up to the very top of the trees in the small clearing. They made a perfect circle at the top of the trees. They threw small, shimmering ropes back and forth to each other. Back and forth flew hundreds of these small ropes. Each was attached to the tops of the trees. In no time at all, they'd built a small roof made of these shimmering ropes. The rope canopy covered the entire clearing. They could no longer see the sun, but it also meant that the dragons could not find them as well. They would not be able to track the smoke or see them from the sky. The small, winged people had hidden them. The little girl held her breath as the dragons approached. She could hear the beating of their fierce wings and the roar of their fires, but the dragons kept going. They did not see them. They kept flying toward the ocean. They were safe for now, beneath this new roof. The little girl looked around finally, once she knew they were safe. All the small winged people had gathered around her. They all waited, silently. A petite winged woman flew up and over the others and settled just in front of the little girl. She began to speak in a language the little girl had never heard before. But when it was clear that the little girl didn't understand, she pointed to herself and said as clearly as she could, "Maya."